And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another incredible installment from very high above all the puerile and pedantic, bombastic twits in the Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Tuesday. It's been a fabulous weekend. A weekend. You know, I always work on Monday. We have to get the podcast out. And by the way, the podcast, if you haven't listened to the last two of them, they've been really, really good. So Saturday's installment of the show was about Nick Siddle, Sheridan County Commissioner Nick Siddle, who attended the Revenue Committee? Anyway, he attended the legislature and advocated for a 43% increase in the gas tax. By the way, he wasn't too happy about the response he got from me about his little lobbying adventure. We'll get to that a little bit later on in the program when we get to the mailbag. The Pony Express, the news from the range, as we'll call it. In many ways, he resembles Ogden Driscoll, and he just can't resist replying on social media, much to his detriment. Also in the program, we now have three candidates for the Platte County and Laramie County commissioners to pick a replacement for now U.S. Attorney Darren Smith, who vacated his seat a couple of weeks ago when he was nominated for U.S. Attorney by President Trump. And much to my surprise, they have three, what I'm told, are pretty good candidates. So we'll talk about that first off. And then a number of stories today. There was a raid on John Bolton's house. Now, this one, I don't know, maybe you think this is important, maybe you don't. But John Bolton was one of the thorns in the side of President Trump. And it happened very quickly after he was fired as, I think he was the director of national intelligence. But anyway, he was fired, and then he really went off the rails, developed a severe case of Trump derangement syndrome. Now his homes are being raided, and we don't really know too much what they were looking for. I'm assuming that it was classified documents that he was keeping. You see, John Bolton, he can't declassify anything, and he's not even in the government anymore. So that might be kind of a problem. But lots to talk about on today's show. First, I want to give you kind of a roadmap of where we're going this week, because it's going to be a little bit different than usual. I'll be traveling tomorrow and the rest of the week, but I think we're still going to have a program. Definitely, we will have one tomorrow. We'll have one Thursday from on location in Jackson on the road, and then we may still do a Friday program, though I'm not entirely sure on that one. So definitely today, tomorrow, and Thursday. We'll figure out what we're going to do on Friday when we get closer there. But anyway, it's going to be kind of a herky-jerky week, obviously. Agent 29 is off gallivanting around again. I don't know what it is with these legislators thinking that they need to represent you and not be here to produce this show. Actually, the Appropriations Committee and specifically Agent 29 have been doing some good work, and he'll have lots to report on when he returns. There's been a lot of things happening, so we'll find out. Doging the Department of Health, and from what I'm told, there's something coming with the Wyoming Business Council. So lots to talk about there. But we begin this morning in Platte County. From the Cow Pie, in an article entitled 3 Candidates to Replace State Senator Darren Smith Selected on Monday. And I quote, replacing Wyoming Senator Darren Smith is one step closer as county Republicans chose 3 people Monday to be considered for the seat that covers parts of Laramie County and all of Platte County. Smith resigned from Senate District 6 earlier this month when he was nominated to serve as U.S. Attorney for the District of Wyoming. He awaits U.S. Senate confirmation and is serving as interim head of that office. The top 3 vote getters out of the 10 candidates were Roy Burt of Wheatland, Taft Love of Cheyenne, and Jeff Barnes, also of Cheyenne. Now, it's up to the county commissioners in both Laramie and Platte counties to choose one candidate from the list. They're expected to make that selection on Friday. Now, the process in Wyoming for filling a vacancy, I mean, you should be aware of it. We go through this periodically, but here's how it works. If it is at the county level, whichever party held that seat, whether it's the Democrats or the Republicans, and we all know that the Democrats suck in Wyoming, so almost all the time it's the Republicans. So they hold a meeting and they ask for applications for whomever wants to fill that seat, and then they hold interviews, and then they'll take a vote, and they select 3 candidates. Now, again, at the county level, those 3 candidates go to the county commissioners, and they choose one of those candidates. The process is very similar at the state level, although, I mean, where those selections go is different. So at the state level, say if it's we're filling a vacancy with the Secretary of State or the Superintendent of Public Instruction, the State Wyoming Republican Party Central Committee gets together and they do the very same thing. They hold interviews, or they ask for applications from candidates. They hold interviews, and then they vote. And the top 3 vote getters then go to the governor to fill that vacancy. There's been a lot of consternation about this process, and the liberals really don't like. Well, they like it when they're in power. They don't like it when conservatives are in power. And in fact, with 2 of the most recent vacancies at the state level, lawsuits were filed. One of them by blowhard Tom Lubnow and Eric Barlow. Yeah, they filed a lawsuit and claiming that it doesn't, represent one person, one vote, which is this court ruling that said that, everybody has to be represented. Well, that one dealt with elections, not necessarily with vacancies. And we've used this same process in Wyoming for as long as I can remember. And it seems to work pretty good. So I've got a bit of sound from last night's meeting. Of course, the operatives of Cowboy state politics are just about everywhere, so it's pretty easy for me to get audio. But let's go ahead and let me play you the vote results from last night's meeting in Guernsey. Take a listen to this.
Again, so, all right.
Okay, so hold on. You're going to hear 2 people in the audio. First is Wyoming State GOP Chairman Brian Miller, or Low Energy Jeb Bush, whichever one fits your liking. Anyway, you'll hear from Brian Miller, and there's Wyoming GOP National Committee man Corey Steinmetz. You'll hear both of them in the audio, but here we go.
Without further ado, I'm going to have Corey Steinmetz, who is our National Committee man and the chair of the Teller Committee, announce the results. The names that are announced will end up going to the county commissioners, and their process, they have 5 days to figure out how to make it happen. And once they have those names, so any of the county commissioners in the room, I think there were a couple of them. What's your process? What date are you going to have this so people can have an expectation? This next Friday in Cheyenne. Okay. All right. What's that? Yeah. All right. So There you go. That's your answer. That's when the final answer will be done.
Where in Cheyenne?
That, I'll let you deal with that with the county commissioners. They'll be able to make those announcements. We have two distinct processes. I'm not going to tread in their process. Okay? So, without further ado, Corey, please make the announcement.
Hurry up. I'm trying. Building up suspense.
So just so everybody understands, we had two teams over here. We split the votes in half. Each team worked each half and then swapped over, and the counts were exactly the same. We did hand count. There were no tabulation machines, so we should be good. So I will read from the bottom up as far as votes. Jay Collins received 3 votes. Marty Shepard, 3 votes. Kim Withers, 5 votes. Gary Bjorklund, 6 votes. Sharon Fain, 15 votes. Ron Rabo, 15 votes. Doug Brickman, 19 votes. Jeff Barnes, 23 votes. Taft Love, 23 votes. And Roy Burt, 24 votes. So your top 3 are Taft Love, Jeff Barnes, and Roy Burt. Congratulations.
Thank you, Corey.
Yay! All right. So a couple of things here. This kind of surprised me because Laramie County is not really known as the bastion of conservatism in this state. In fact, it's exactly the opposite. For a really long time, Laramie County has been controlled by the Redcoats. And now it's not to say that conservatives haven't made strides in Laramie County. Taft Love, who is now one of the candidates, was the GOP chairman last go-around. Recently conservatives have been making some strides in Laramie County. Now, what I expected was that there'd be 3 Redcoats that they chose, and then that would be it. And then the county commissioners from Laramie and Platte County would have 3 crappy candidates to choose from. But to my pleasant surprise, that didn't happen. Now, Senate District 6 encompasses all of Platte County, and then the rural northern parts of Laramie County. So the majority of the district is in Platte County. So it kind of makes sense. Platte County is a pretty conservative place. So it makes sense that they would choose 3 conservative candidates. Now, Roy Burt, I don't know too much about him. Let's see here. Let's look at the Cowboy article and see if there's anything about there. Let's see here. Burt from the Cowboy, quoting now. Burt, a 63-year-old retiree from the Postal Service, lives in Wheatland and was the top vote getter with 24 votes. Love, a small businessman from Cheyenne, and Barnes, a former law enforcement officer in Cheyenne, both received 23 votes. And so, it's kind of a crapshoot. What's going to happen with the Platte County and Laramie County commissioners. But they've got 3 conservative candidates to choose from. And so I think that, representation in Senate District 6 really isn't going to change all of that much, whichever one the county commissioners choose. And, keep in mind that by and large, the county commissioners in Wyoming, and it doesn't really matter which county you go to, they're not the most conservative people. Let us not forget that the chairman of the president of the Wyoming County Commissioners Association is Natalia Macker, a Democrat from Jackson. And when she was elected, she was the only person nominated. Think about that. A room jam-packed full of Republicans only nominates a Democrat to be the president of their association. That pretty much tells you everything you need to know about the County Commissioners Association in Wyoming. But anyway, apparently they made the Republicans made a good choice, as they should. And now it's up to the county commissioners. And, this is always the trick. Usually when 3 candidates are sent to the governor, take, for example, I think it was the state superintendent of public instruction. There was Marty Halverson, Tom Kelly, and Brian Schrader. So Tom Kelly, pretty libertarian. He's more libertarian than he is conservative. And then Marty Halverson, of course, very conservative, much more conservative than she was when she was in the legislature. But she's a good friend of mine, friend of the program. So we knew that the governor was not going to choose either one of those. And Brian Schrader, a pretty conservative guy, that's who the governor chose. So usually what happens is these candidates go to either the county commissioner or the governor, and they pick the least conservative one out of the bunch. Well, he's got the county commissioners have a job on their hands, and so I was pleasantly surprised to see to see that. And, so I'll keep you posted on what happens and anything that comes out of it. There's a lot more to that meeting. So I got the audio late last night from the meeting in Guernsey. And so I'll sift through it, and there might be some more, I don't know, nuggets in there to talk about. But for right now, things look good, and we'll know by Friday who the senator from Senate District 6 is going to be. Next up, this is something that I have been trying to warn people about for a really long time. From the Cowboy, popular hunting app may not be able to keep you from trespassing or out of big trouble. Now, there's an app, I think it's called X Hunt, that just about everybody uses. And I have tried to tell as many hunters as I know that they shouldn't count on that GPS app to tell them where they are. And here's the reason why. Our phones are pretty good, and they operate, the GPS in them anyway, operates off of satellites, just like a handheld Garmin that you would use. Your phone works exactly the same way. But and let me just explain how this thing works. So you got a bunch of satellites up in the air, and your phone or whatever device you're using is coordinating with all of those. And so the satellites are helping the phone determine your position on the ground. But keep in mind, everything is moving. All those satellites are moving. And so the accuracy of your phone or GPS unit is only accurate anywhere between 5 and 30 feet. It depends on, weather conditions. It depends on the barometric pressure. And, there's a lot of different variables with it. So generally speaking, it's pretty good to tell you where your position is. If you're driving down the road and you're using the directions app, Google Maps or whatever, it's pretty good. It can tell that you're on the interstate and you're traveling in the right direction. But you would never want to use it to try to determine your precise location. To do that, you have to have a known point on the ground. So that's what surveyors use. So when when you're driving along the street and you see the survey crew out and there's this big unit that's just kind of stationary, what they have done is set that unit on top of a known point. And that is a point on the ground where we know the exact coordinates, the northing and easting. That's survey speak for longitude and latitude, but the northing and easting of that exact point on the ground. And then the guy that's walking around with the stick, well, you can triangulate the position from the satellites, from the known point on the ground, from where you're at. So that's the only way that you can be for sure of where you're at on the ground. So if you're out hunting and you're just using your phone to tell you where you're at, you would never want to rely on it to determine whether you're on public land or private land, because depending on the satellites, depending on weather conditions, you might be in the right spot. You might be 30 yards off. And so if you are 30 yards off, there's a pretty high likelihood that you're trespassing. And this is also one of the problems with corner crossing. Now, while in theory, and this is the argument that proponents of corner crossing make, that, hey, you can step from one piece of public land, step over the corner to another piece of public land. Now, if we could take out all those other variables, your phone, the satellite conditions, the weather conditions, all of that, well, then, yeah, you could probably determine where you're at. But since most of us are not surveyors, and you probably don't carry survey equipment when you're hunting, it is not possible for you to determine where you're at any given spot. And so while you may be standing at a point, and let's even say you have a survey marker right in front of you, you're standing there looking at it. Well, you don't know exactly where you're at in relation to it. You don't know the exact direction. And even though that thing may be, right in front of you and you may be looking at it, you don't know if you're standing on private land or public land, simply because these things are not 100% accurate. And so you may be trespassing and not even know it. And so while in theory it is possible, if you just look at a map and you say, okay, well, there's this corner here, there's public land here, private and private, and you could step over. In theory, yeah, it could work. In practice, it'll never work, and you will probably be trespassing. Well, there's a piece in the Cowboy telling you exactly that, and I think that you should pay attention to it. And I quote, Practically every hunter these days uses GIS mapping apps, such as OnX Hunt. But coordinates can be off by a few yards, just enough to get somebody in trouble for trespassing. That's why some hunters and anglers said they rely on it as a good guidepost, but not completely foolproof method for making sure that they're on the right side of property lines. Wyoming Title 23 trespass statutes apply to hunting, angling, trapping, shed antler collecting, and walking and biking and everything else. And outdoors people are solely responsible for knowing where they are in relation to private property. Quote, "I didn't realize I'd crossed the property line," isn't an excuse that will fly with the game warden writing a trespass citation. Hunting-related trespass is punishable by a fine of up to $1,000, loss of hunting privileges, and possible seizure of firearms or harvested game. The Missoula, Montana OnX Map company began offering mobile GPS applications in 2013, which have become widely popular. The OnX Hunt app features displays that show users where the boundaries are of their hunt areas, as well as the locations of private and public land parcels. It also indicates the hunter's location, usually with a dot. It is generally regarded to be accurate within a few yards. But again, it all depends on how many satellites your phone is talking to, what the weather conditions are, where you're at on the ground. I mean, there's a lot of different variables. Now, admittedly, technology has improved, as it always does. When I was working for a pipeline company and I was the GIS specialist, the handheld Garmin, man, it might be accurate from anywhere between 5 to 100 feet. About the only thing it was good for is figuring out where you generally are on a map. I'd use it to go lay out pipeline routes or roads or whatever. And, you would never rely on that for a surveyed position. And so the way it would work is I'd create a map from where I was using the little Garmin thing, give it to the engineers and say, generally, guys, this is where I want it to go. You figure out the best place. So anyway, this is a big problem for hunters. And a lot of people are under the mistaken impression that because their phone shows them generally where they're at, that's the exact position, and that's just not the case. So I'm glad that the Cowboy is finally putting out an article about this. Let's see here. Let's read a little bit more of it. Quote, "Retired Wyoming Game and Fish Warden Benji Brown told the Cowboy State Deal, the Cowboy, that during his career, he didn't go out and try to find hunters who were trespassing. Instead, he responded to landowner complaints that hunters were traipsing through their property without permission. Once in a while, someone would try to claim that they'd strayed onto private property because of their OnX location was slightly off. Sometimes he could check their OnX app, which would track where they had been. If the tracking line showed the hunter had gone a considerable distance across private property, it was essentially a case of their own app telling on them. When trespassing disputes come down to a matter of hunters being a few yards over the line, Brown said he'd leave it up to the judge to decide. So a lot of this is common sense, and when it comes to trespassing, my advice is you better be darn sure of where you're at. Don't rely on your phone. Don't rely on a map, though I would say, the map that you get from the Forest Service, the BLM, they're generally pretty accurate. But again, it's not going to give you an exact location. So you just be really careful of where you're at, and don't assume anything, my friends. Well, moving on. There's been a lot of talk in the media about Donald Trump being a felon. In fact, I've got a piece from Bill Maher that I'm going to play a little bit later where he mentions, Trump wanted to help out felons since he became one. But the question is, were all of those felonies actually appropriately given? Was there an appropriate decision? Well, we had the raid on Mar-a-Lago, which a president, and here's what it all boiled down to. They said he had classified documents. Well, he was the president. And a president doesn't have to even say that he's declassifying anything. President Trump was legally in possession of all of those documents that they found at Mar-a-Lago, which is why that case crumbled, because there was no there. Well, now John Bolton, one of the key opponents to Donald Trump, is in a bit of hot water himself. Let's see here. I think, did I get this one from Fox News? Anyway, never Trumpers who cheered Mar-a-Lago raid melt down at search of Bolton's house. Listen to this. Quote, the FBI searched the home of former Trump national security advisor. He was national security advisor, not the director of national intelligence. John Bolton on Friday, reportedly in relation to Bolton's alleged possession of classified documents. Unsurprisingly, the same people who had no problem when the FBI raided the home of President Donald Trump are now melting down. Olivia Troy, a former Homeland Security advisor to Vice President Mike Pence, said on X, quote, that the search is an example of authoritarianism. Of course it is now, because they're searching the home of people who don't like Donald Trump or Democrats. Now, it's not authoritarianism when the homes of Republicans are searched. And let's just be very clear about how Republicans were treated versus how all of these radical leftists are being treated. If your name was, Donald Trump, or if it was Steve Bannon, or if it was Roger Stone, or the list goes on and on. Some of them were arrested in airports, shackled in front of everybody and hauled off to jail. Several of them spent time in prison. Now, that seems to be a little bit overkill. But when it's a Democrat, well, of course, the folks on the left have to melt down. Quote, when Kash Patel turns the FBI into Trump's revenge squad, that's not justice. It's authoritarianism. Today, it's John Bolton. Tomorrow, it could be another critic who dares defy Trump. The Bureau's credibility is being gutted from within. This is intimidation, not enforcement. Every American should be alarmed. Now, Troy, of course, had no grave concerns about authoritarianism after the August 2022 raid on Mar-a-Lago, when she jumped on CNN to speculate that Trump had mishandled secret documents and was in bed with foreign adversaries. Former NBC News Chuck Todd said on X, quote, the senators who were bullied into confirming Kash Patel, how are you feeling today? It's not like you weren't warned that this guy would be comfortable politicizing the agency. It's not like the FBI and the ATF and every other government agency wasn't politicized under Joe Biden, but pay no attention to that. Don't even think that some Democrat could use the law enforcement agencies of this country for their own political purposes. Of course, when that's the case, you're not supposed to look at it. But when it's Republicans, when there's a chance that they could blame Republicans for the exact same thing that they're doing, the left doesn't hesitate. Now, Chuck Todd is the same person who, after the raid on Mar-a-Lago, said Republicans unifying around Trump were merely, quote, undercutting faith in institutions. Chuck Todd, along with three other NBC writers, told readers to, quote, remember that the FBI would only conduct a search with a warrant showing probable cause, and therefore Republicans should have preached calm or even measured caution instead of reacting to the raid. But again, now that we're talking about people on the left, well, it's an entirely different situation. Rules for me, but not for thee, my friends. Now, and it's, politics, and I wish it wasn't this way, but politics works kind of like a pendulum. Now, the farther things swing to the left, the farther they have to go back to the right to reset them. And so while some of these things may seem extreme, if you have a guy, it doesn't matter who it is, John Bolton or anybody else, and they are not the president of the United States, and they are in possession of classified documents, that, my friends, is a crime. And crimes need to be prosecuted. It doesn't matter what your name is. Let's see here. Bill, now some of the other leftists have been just absolutely melting down. One of them is Bill Kristol. Now, Bill Kristol, he used to be on Fox News. Maybe he still is every once in a while, but he is not a conservative. He is an establishment liberal Republican. He is a redcoat. The only reason why he's a Republican is so he can have some sort of credibility on the nation's largest news network. That's the only reason why. Well, he posted on Blue Sky, which I don't even know anybody who's on Blue Sky. I'm try to be pretty up on all these social media platforms, but there's only so many I can deal with. And Blue Sky, my friends, not on the list. Let me just show you. Let's see here. His post on X. I'm just, and again, this is a clear indication that Agent 29 needs to get back to work as soon as possible so he can push the buttons for me and I don't actually have to do it myself. But here's Bill Kristol's post. Maybe. There it is. Aha. Here we go. Quote, how do you spell intimidation? The FBI is searching the home of and office of John Bolton as part of an investigation into the handling of classified information. Bolton was not detained and has not been charged with any crimes. But of course, it's intimidation when their allies on the left are found to have done something wrong. But it is not intimidation when it is Democrats who are in charge of it. So, my friends, it is just another example of the double standard that exists in the media and with those on the left. Again, and we all know this, like if you're a Republican, you're going to be charged and prosecuted as much as humanly possible, even if it's right, wrong, or indifferent. But if you're a Democrat, well, of course, we'll give you every benefit of the doubt. It's absolutely ridiculous, my friends, and you shouldn't pay any attention to it. Well, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue with the program. Cowboy State Politics Live on a Tuesday. See you in a bit. Are you tired of all the meaningless political drivel floating around right now? Endless commentary that really doesn't have anything backing it up? Do you long for the days of true investigative journalism coming from an authoritative source who really doesn't care how popular and apparently good-looking a politician is? Fortunately for you, that's what I do on Cowboy State Politics. New episodes are published every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can get them anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There, you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles I might bring up during the course of the program. Cowboy State Politics Live, the program you're listening to right now, is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. Pay attention to all of that other block-headed nonsense if you want. Just make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live on a Tuesday. I'm your host, David Iverson, documented to be almost always right 99% of the time, a record that I really wish the mainstream media would try to eclipse. But they're not going to, my friends, because the only thing they really engage in is propaganda, which is, ignoring the things that are important, not telling you the truth on things that are important to them. A perfect example of that was the GOP meeting that was held in Hewlett over the weekend. I, your illustrious host, was the only media type that was there. And it was kind of disappointing that some of the media outlets, newspapers, that are very, very close to Hewlett didn't even bother to show up. And neither did the Cowboy. I mean, it just goes to show that they're only interested in things that benefit their agenda. They're not really interested in telling you the news, because if they had, they would have told you about this weekend's meeting. Now, if you'd like to hear some of the sound bites from the State Central Committee meeting that was held in Hewlett, listen to the Monday edition of the podcast. I kind of went over a few things. I mean, there wasn't a lot of stuff that happened. There was a couple of resolutions, as they always are, but really, most of the meeting was kind of business as usual. That doesn't mean that it's not news. It just means that there wasn't anything extraordinary. Now, there are some people that are not exactly happy with some of the stuff that's been reported on the podcast. One of those is Sheridan County Commissioner Nick Siddle. Nick Jack the Tax Up Siddle. He's not very happy with the reporting that I did on his little adventure in lobbying when he went to the legislature and advocated for a 43% increase on your taxes. Here is one of the things that he's objecting to. Listen to this.
And, for example,
Sheridan
County,
okay, that's him. That's Nick Siddle in front of the legislative committee advocating for a 43% increase on the gas tax, a 10-cent increase, which, by the way, this is something that the liberals always try to push through the legislature. They have to find a way to increase taxes no matter what. This was in the Transportation Committee, by the way. Anyway, here's Jack the Tax Up Siddle. Listen to this.
Fairly small budget. Our budget is around $22 million a year. We were just looking at paving some roads. It costs $2 million a mile to pave a county road. When you've got a $22 million budget in your county, I can guarantee you how many roads get paved, and that'd be zero, because you just don't have the money. But
in Sheridan County, it seems to me that even if you do have the money to pave roads, it still doesn't happen. They have far more important things to spend your tax dollars on, like $3 million flower pots. Actually, 2.7, 2.8 is a little bit closer, but really, who's counting? Certainly not the Sheridan County Commissioners. Just to refresh your memory a little bit, and I understand that I don't have to do that for anybody that lives in Sheridan County. The flower pot is still a little bit raw for everybody in Sheridan County, but allow me to just refresh the memory of all of my other listeners. Sheridan County Commissioners Christy Antoinette Haswell.
Riding along in my automobile, cruising and playing the radio.
Lonnie Wright and Nick Jack the Tax Up Siddle voted to spend approximately $3 million of Sheridan County taxpayers' money to remove a street and put in its place the ugliest flower garden that I think that I've ever seen. Now, had they not blown $3 million of our money, Nick Siddle could have had 1.5 miles of road paved in Sheridan County, since he seems to be so concerned with all of that. Yeah, he's not really concerned with that at all. Well, anyway, he decided to comment on it. And, I don't do this very often, but since he is a Sheridan County commissioner, and he is behaving just like Ogden Driscoll, I see no reason why we shouldn't cover what he said on his comments on the podcast. And I quote from Jack the Tax Up Siddle. Mr. Iverson, your name-calling is an embarrassment, not to me, but to you. I would assume your mother and teachers taught you better. I'm not concerned if you disagree with me politely or politically. He's not polite at all, ever, when he disagrees with somebody, by the way. And I would be willing to visit with about it anytime, as non-name-calling adults realize I have children and grandchildren who I don't care to hear your childish name-calling tactics. Well, I'm sorry. I found the Jack the Tax Up Siddle to be entirely appropriate because that's what he was doing. Now, I want to know, Nick Siddle, who paid for your little lobbying adventure last week? Was it me or was it you? I bet that if we look into it, we're going to find that Sheridan County taxpayers paid a whole bunch for it. But anyway, here was my reply to old Nick Jack the Tax Up Siddle. Quote, "It was not me who went to the legislature and advocated in favor of increasing our gas tax by 43%. You did that, sir. I referred to you as Nick Jack the Tax Up Siddle, which seems entirely appropriate. I assume that your parents taught you better than to waste hard-earned tax dollars taken from people who had a hard time paying their taxes. I also assume that you now regret your ridiculous vote on the flower pot, and instead of admitting that, you're lashing out at me for playing your own words. You, sir, should reconsider your numerous liberal stances." Now, Nick Siddle likes to play himself off as if he is a fiscal conservative, but of course we know that that's not at all the truth. Not at all. After giving over his tenure of being on the Sheridan County Commissioner, he's voted to give hundreds of thousands of dollars of your tax money to quote-unquote nonprofit groups, which, by the way, most of those are absolutely unconstitutional. The only way that it's constitutional if it's, quote, necessary support for the poor. That's a direct quotation from Article 16, Section 6 of the Wyoming Constitution. Now, if you ever need a copy of the Constitution, I suggest you ask Commissioner Siddle. He's got one one in his back pocket, brand new because he's never opened it. Now, here's what old Siddle, Jack the Tax Up Siddle, that is, had to say in response. And again, this is what qualifies him as almost exactly like Ogden Driscoll. Cannot resist replying, much to his detriment. Here's what he said. Quote, I would love to see your proposal how to maintain and improve roads and still lower taxes, regardless of whether you believe YDOT is down $410 million per year. Yeah, I don't even know if they know that they're down that much, but that's what they claim, and they have for the last 4 years. And oddly enough, we still have roads that aren't crumbling. I suggest that perhaps we take an accounting of exactly where YDOT spends their money, and perhaps we look at other places where perhaps we could save some money and then divert that money elsewhere. I don't know, to like fixing up roads. But Nick Siddle, and he goes on. I guess I should read to you his straw man argument. Quote, do you favor toll roads, mileage assessment, or just not maintaining roads, fuel taxes at least partially absorbed by fuel producers and taxes users of highways, including non-residents who drive across? Okay, so first of all, companies don't pay taxes, Nick, and you would know that if you weren't a radical Democrat that has been in government way too long. Perhaps instead of teaching shop class, you should have attended maybe a history class or an American or Wyoming government class. But since you didn't do that, obviously you don't know that it is consumers that pay taxes. Any taxes that are assessed to companies are passed on to consumers. That's the only way that you stay in business, Nick. And if you had written a paycheck for your entire career, maybe you would know that instead of being in government. But I might digress a little bit. Let's see here. Now, here is my final reply, and then we'll be done with Nick Jack the Tax Up Siddle. Quote, Nick, it's clear from your comments and your voting record that maintenance of roads is the least of your concerns. You and your pal commissions have a habit of wasting money specifically earmarked for roads. Secondly, your proposal of jacking up fuel taxes represents a fraction of what YDOT claims they need. It is not going to help roads at all. In fact, an increase in the fuel tax of 10 cents would only garner about $25 million. Which is nothing in comparison to what they claim, they're $410 million. So it's a fraction of a fraction. Third, by your own words, any proceeds from this tax increase would amount to a negligible amount to individual counties, about $210,000, and thus doesn't have anything to do with construction cost increases. So, Mr. Siddle, why not be honest about your plans for this tax increase? As I said in my podcast, only liberals like yourself are in favor of increasing taxes without first reducing spending in other areas. Finally, I think you know what you can do with your straw man. All of our roads aren't going to crumble overnight and the sky isn't falling. How much maintenance could you have accomplished had you not voted to give our tax dollars away every year? And P.S. Hugs and kisses. Companies don't pay taxes. Consumers do. You see, this is the same liberal garbage that Nick Siddle has been trying to peddle for years while he has been on the county commission. That we have to tax you more so we can provide you more services, when in truth, they don't really take care of the things that they have to take care of. That whole flower pot that I keep complaining about, they used money specifically earmarked for roads and bridges to build that thing. I mean, it's the biggest irony in government that I've heard of. They used road and bridge money to remove a road or a bridge. It's absolutely ridiculous. Nick, I know you're not listening because you're telling more lies during a county commissioners meeting, but if you watch this later, perhaps you should crack a book. Perhaps you should look at the Wyoming Constitution. Maybe you should stop trying to steal taxpayer money and waste it on your pet projects. And by the way, I want to know who paid for your trip down to lobby the legislature, since if you watch the video, you were so proud of being there, even telling the legislature that you were the chairman of the Transportation Committee of the Wyoming County Commissioners Association. Whoopity-doo, Nick Jack the Tax Up Siddle. By the way, you are welcome on Cowboy State Politics anytime you want. I'll give you an hour. I'll give you the whole program if you want. But I doubt, since all of the times in the past that I have asked to get a comment from you, and you've refused every single time, by the way, that I doubt that you'll come on the program. But in the event that you do want to come on, Come on, baby. We'll sit in my studio and we'll talk about all of these things, and you can defend your extraordinarily liberal voting record. I think you should tell citizens about it. I think they should hear your thinking as to why you vote like a Democrat every single time something comes up on the committee. And by the way, when I dig it out, I'm going to play the audio of you saying that a suggestion that perhaps we reduce spending and give taxpayer money back to Wyoming citizens or Sheridan County citizens is, quote, political grandstanding. I'll have that one for you before too long, old Nicky boy. But my friends, you have to hold these county officials accountable to what they say and what they do. And most of them are completely not used to, they're not used to being criticized at all. And the only thing that they can do is throw up straw man arguments and try to attack you and say that you're being mean. That's the only thing that they do, which, by the way, one of the only people that, let me see if there's any other people that liked that stupid comment. Let's see here. 1, Gail Simmons. 2, Jack Roberts, whoever the heck that is. The whole point, my friends, is that you have to hold your county officials accountable to what they say and what they do. And if you don't, they're just going to spend your money into oblivion. That's what they do. Now, during the first Trump administration, moving on, I'm tired of talking about Nick Siddle, but so let's talk about some other miscreants in government. So during the first Trump administration, did you ever notice how they'd start an investigation and it never went anywhere, that nothing ever happened? Well, there were a lot of them that were stymied by Comey, Clinton. Let me just give you a list of all these investigations into James Comey, Hillary Clinton, Adam Schiff, and Hunter Biden. Did you notice that none of those went anywhere? Well, it was the DOJ, the FBI, and the IRS in Trump's first term that stymied a large number of Trump antagonists, or that let a large number of Trump antagonists off the hook for their potential criminality. It remains to be seen how the second Trump DOJ will handle possible high-profile prosecutions. Now, the Justice Department, the FBI, the IRS, during the first Trump administration, declined to aggressively pursue or squashed investigations into potential criminal behavior by James Comey, Hillary Clinton, and her Clinton Foundation. Now, Adam Schiff, Hunter Biden, and other politically sensitive figures. My friends, as I mentioned earlier, that politics works on a pendulum. And when the pendulum is pushed so far to the left, it has to right itself. And to do that, it comes all the way to the right. Now, the trick is, and the danger is, that because, and think about the little desk thing toy that you have that, it's got the pendulum balls on it, and you pull one way the heck back and the other one swings way the heck out. Well, the problem is that when things go so far to the left, there is a tendency to swing them all the way to the other side. I guess I should use my right hand. Swing it all the way to the right, and you end up being just as extreme as the other side. But when it comes to these high-profile investigations, first, we have to acknowledge that, yes, crimes were committed. If you look at the Clinton Foundation, the Clinton Global Initiative, it's very obvious that was a giant money laundering organization, that very little money went to Haiti, which was the supposed goal, the stated goal of the Clinton Foundation. John Bolton, if he is in possession or was in possession of classified material, he needs to be prosecuted. Adam Schiff, he's got a mortgage fraud problem, and he lied repeatedly, which caused the president of the United States to be impeached. Now, and there's James Comey using a phony Clinton dossier on President Trump as the basis to get a FISA warrant. That's lying to the judiciary. It's a crime. By the way, if you get visited by the FBI, don't ever lie to them. That's a federal crime if you lie to them. And so what does it mean when you trump up a whole bunch of evidence, no pun intended, and you deliver it to the FISA court, and they issue a warrant based on the crappy information that you gave them? What does that mean? But my friends, all of these people, if it is proved, if we have probable cause, they have to be prosecuted. We have to see some people in handcuffs or prosecute it in whatever way. But we have to do that to create legitimacy in our justice system. If the Trump administration lets these folks off the hook for whatever reason, whether the specific departments stymie investigations or if the Trump administration just loses interest, we're not going to really have any faith in our justice system anymore. Not that we had a lot to begin with, but some people have to be arrested and have to be prosecuted. A vast majority of people voted for Donald Trump in the last election. It was a landslide. And one of the reasons why they voted that way is we are sick to death of people getting away, high-profile people getting away with committing crimes with nothing happening to them. And I mean, if the laws apply to you and me, the laws have to apply to them as well. And I would argue that if you are in elected office, that the punishment should be more severe, that there should be more scrutiny upon you because you are in a position of trust. Just think about this. Think about the last time you heard of a police officer committing a crime or, acting inappropriately. Or, the common one is a deputy in a jail doing something untoward with an inmate. How fast do we react? We make sure that person's no longer employed and that they're prosecuted if a prosecution is warranted. If it's a local official, here's a good example. The clerk, I think she was the clerk in Pavilion. It was found that she embezzled a whole bunch of money from the town of Pavilion, and she was prosecuted. Interestingly enough, Senator Nancy Case was the one who went and testified at her sentencing, but she was convicted of a felony. Now, the court didn't really give her the punishment that I think that she deserved. I think she just got a light sentence with probation, but still, the embezzlement was found out, it was investigated, it was prosecuted, and she, served whatever punishment was given to her. So if a little clerk in Pavilion, Wyoming is prosecuted because of acts that she or he committed while in office, there is no reason, and in fact, I think it should be more severe, that if you were placed in a high position of trust and you violate the law, you should be prosecuted too. I don't think the punishment should be any different, but the scrutiny ought to be that we ought to pay way more attention to what you're doing than other people because you're allegedly representing citizens. And that's your job. And if you take advantage of that public trust, well, then you need to be prosecuted. And that's the problem with Comey and Clinton and Schiff and all of them. We absolutely, and John Bolton, we have to investigate them, and if they did wrong, we have to prosecute them. From the piece, quote, the bombshell revelations involving ex-FBI General Counsel James Baker and ex-Comey Chief of Staff James Rybicki were memorialized in documents that Patel discovered earlier this year. Kash Patel, the director of the FBI. But the passages were originally redacted by the Justice Department in versions sent to Congress earlier this month. The memos detail evidence and interviews gathered by U.S. Postal Inspection Service agents covering classified information leaked to the New York Times in October of 2016. Now, they're talking about James Comey because it has been revealed, and I think that it was Comey himself that said he had a pal in the media at New York Times or Time Magazine that he was leaking classified information to. But, quote, the USPIS, so the U.S. Postal Service investigation, also revealed that James Baker disclosed U.S. government classified information to the New York Times under the belief he was ultimately instructed and authorized to do so by then FBI Director James Comey. One summary memo reads, quote, for example, during interviews, Baker indicated that FBI Chief of Staff James Rybicki instructed him, James Baker, to disclose the information to the New York Times, and Baker understood Rybicki was conveying this information and authorization from James Comey. Rybicki, as Comey's chief of staff, and Baker as the FBI's top lawyer, both played key roles in the FBI's investigation into Clinton's mishandling of classified information and into baseless claims of Trump-Russia collusion. Comey didn't respond to a request for comment sent through his website. Rybicki did not respond to a request for comment, and Baker previously declined to comment through his attorney. So the FBI memo said that by late 2017, December of 2017, John Durham and the U.S. Postal Service Investigative Service completed their investigation and provided a memorandum with their conclusions and recommendations to the U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions. And we all know what Jeff Sessions did with it. A big fat nothing. Because all of these deep state actors, the bureaucrats that had been employed at the FBI and the DOJ for probably decades decided that they were not going to prosecute these offenses that were being investigated. And so they went nowhere. And the folks that committed crimes were not held accountable. But keep in mind, my friends, if you step out of line one little bit, you are going to be prosecuted. It's rules for thee, but not for me, and we have to stop it, my friends. Justice is supposed to be blind. That's why the statue outside a lot of court buildings, Lady Justice is blind, that it doesn't matter who you are. Remember, no one is above the law. How many times did we hear people like Adam Schiff and Hillary Clinton and James Comey and all of the rest of them say, no one is above the law in reference to Donald Trump? But when it comes to them, they're the ones that believe that they are, in fact, above the law. That has to stop. And we have to see people investigated. We have to see people prosecuted. Now, do I think that Barack Obama is going to be prosecuted? No. Do I think that Hillary Clinton is going to be wearing silver bracelets, even though she absolutely deserves it? I would throw a party if that actually happened, but I don't really think that it's going to. However, some of these lower level people, James Rabicki and James Baker and Bill Barr, Bill Barr was in on it too. But will they be investigated and prosecuted? Some of them better, because if they don't, I mean, I see no reason why any of you should follow the law. But see, that's just the thing, my friends. You and I are good people, and so we follow the law. And you know, it's the old adage. I can't remember which TV program I was watching, but it was a question of, well, you know, if you're following the law, what do you have to worry about? You don't have anything to worry about. Well, that's just the point. Good people follow the law. Bad people like Hillary Clinton, James Comey, Jim Baker, whatever his name is, Rabicki, I don't even know. They don't, because they're in a position of power. And they think that they're going to get away with it. And this is the same crap we've been dealing with for a long time, my friends, and it's got to stop. Hopefully with Donald Trump in the White House, we'll be able to bring some of these things to a conclusion. When we come back, the biggest boondoggle ever, the bullet train. And anybody who suggests it is wasting your money. We'll talk about it in just a second.
Ever since gold backing was removed from the dollar, the value has dropped significantly over the past few decades. Experts say this is one of the main reasons goods are more expensive and your savings are worth less each year. How would you know how many dollars to save for retirement if the valuation of the dollar changes over time? Would you work all week for that $20 gold piece? Let's look at the valuation of this coin from the 1970s to today. When President Nixon took us off the gold standard in 1971, this coin traded for about $275. Today, it trades for about $14,000. Buying and holding rare coins using only a fraction of your portfolio is our suggested way to save for the future. Call U.S. Coin Capital at 1-800-878-2646 to get your free United States Gold and Silver Buyer's Guide.
Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Welcome to Lessons in Civility by Morton Buildings. Gentlemen, is your garage completely jam-packed full of all of your unnecessary crap, and your lovely wife has been on your tail, nagging you non-stop to clean it out? It's not because she just wants to incessantly irritate you. Chivalry dictates that you should clear out a space so she can park her car inside and you don't end up sleeping on the couch anymore. To do that, contact Nick and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Not only are they the experts in metal building construction, they're also skilled at keeping you out of the doghouse. One more time. Their phone number is 307-674-2532, or you can check them out at their website, mortonbuildings.com. This has been Lessons in Civility from Morton Buildings. Welcome back to the program. David Iverson, Cowboy State Politics Live, doing what I was born to do each and every day with talent given to me by God himself. Thank you for listening and watching the program, my friends. Thank you for everything you do. Without you, there would be no reason for me to be here. I'd be like talking to the wall or something, which I guess if you ask the lovely Christine, maybe I do that anyway. But thank you for watching and listening to the program. Thank you for watching and listening to everything Cowboy State Politics. And as we should all be, I'm very thankful to the blessings that God has given me. He's been very gracious in giving me this platform. So thank you very much. You can listen to the Cowboy State Politics podcast every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. And, of course, the live program every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. and most of the time all the way to 10 a.m. And, again, let me just repeat the roadmap for this week. It's going to be a little bit weird because I'm traveling. And so we'll have a program today. We'll have a program tomorrow, although a little bit abbreviated. So we're just going to do an hour tomorrow because I got to get on the road. Thursday we'll have a show, and we'll probably have a brief program on Friday. So just a little bit of herky-jerky, but it's okay. It's all right. I'm still with you. I'm not going anywhere, and I'm going to keep bringing you the news as you expect from me. A charge that I take very, very seriously, my friends. And I wish that the rest of the media would accept the charge that they're given by you, but they don't. They don't really give a crap. And that's why this program is so popular. And just to give you some numbers, and this is why if you want to know what excites me, Cowboy State, and you already know this, but Cowboy State Politics is now number 30 on the list of the top 100 programs you should listen to in 2025. That's right, my friends. We've gone up. Now, a while ago, it was we were number 33. Now we're number 30. Incredibly grateful. And this program has right at 500,000 views on Facebook just since January 1st. Can you believe that? 500,000 views. So incredible. I'm very grateful. Thank you for watching, my friends. So one of the biggest boondoggles in politics is high-speed rail. How often have we heard that? Oh, we have to have high-speed rail from San Francisco to Los Angeles. There's a group that wants high-speed rail from Cheyenne to Denver. Now, anytime you hear the words high-speed rail, what should immediately go through your head is political graft. Because there will be I almost cussed on my own program, a crap load of money dumped into it, and the politicians, friends, every single one of them will reap the benefits of the hard-earned tax dollars that are stolen from you. And by the way, if you're being taxed more than the government actually needs, that's theft. It's legalized theft, but it is theft nonetheless, which, I mean, that's what old Nicky Boy was trying to do with the gas tax, is steal more of your money. But there's a piece from ABC News. Californians, and specifically Gavin Newsom, they are excited about the progress that the high-speed rail has made. So much so that they think they might be done in 2032. And I quote from ABC News, California's long-delayed bullet train slated to run in the Central Valley by 2032. And I quote, California's long-delayed high-speed rail project could be operating in the Central Valley as early as 2032, but it is far short of securing funding it needs to connect up north towards San Francisco to the Bay Area, down towards Los Angeles, according to the report by officials. It will cost, listen to this number, $87 billion to build between Gilroy, about 80 miles southeast of San Francisco, and Palmdale, about 37 miles north of Los Angeles. The High Speed Rail Authority reports the section is expected to start running, that section, in 2038. Now, I know you may have these numbers may seem a little outrageous, but this is 2025. And they're saying that it might be ready by 2032 or 2038. Now, how much money could we dump into this project in those years? I'm saying probably, I don't know, maybe another 50 billion, maybe. But again, my friends, high-speed rail is a joke. By 2032, we'll probably all have flying cars or something. Now, the project is designed to shuttle riders across nearly 500 miles between San Francisco and Los Angeles. When voters approved the proposition in 2008, to authorize a bond to fund the third of the project, the cost was estimated to be around $33 billion. And was to have been up and running by 2020. Now, we all know that it's not 2020, and it's not up and running, and it's not even anywhere close to that, nor is it anywhere close to $33 billion. Now, it could cost up to, listen to this number, $128 billion to build, the authority estimated last year. Officials will release an updated estimate in a business report next year. Now, there is 119 miles of construction underway in the Central Valley, but the state needs to make progress to build towards larger population centers near the Bay Area and L.A. Now, just a question. Amtrak. Oh, you remember Amtrak Joe, where he rode the Amtrak his entire career, and he's read thousands of miles, and he's Amtrak Joe. You remember that whole spiel? Well, Amtrak has consistently lost money since it went online. Now, if you want a business to be screwed up, involve the government in it. I mean, if you're really not interested in making money and you're interested in losing money, involving the government is a fantastic idea, because that is exactly what will happen, my friends. Because high-speed rail, Amtrak, all of these things, they're not really meant to, increase transportation, and they're not really meant to service taxpayers. They are meant, however, to service the political friends and allies of politicians who come up with these stupid boondoggles. And so anytime you hear anything that even sounds like high-speed rail, what should go through your mind is theft. Theft, my friends, and that is exactly what it is, and there's nothing more. And in the case of the high-speed rail in California, it's going to be $128 billion right now. Right now, they're saying that the total project will be $128 billion, which means by 2038, which it probably won't be completed by then, but by 2038, the cost is going to be $250 billion. Why not? Because that is the intended purpose of it, my friends. There is a reason why the free market has not built high-speed rail, because it's not profitable. There's a reason why the free market doesn't operate Amtrak, because there's not a demand for it. It's slow, it's expensive, and there's no reason to ride on it. You could drive your car quicker than you could ride Amtrak. Now, subways, the New York subway system, I think, probably pretty good. Washington, D.C., the above-ground rail, I rode on that. Okay, works pretty good. But a high-speed rail project is nothing more than an attempt to steal more and more and more of your money, and it's an endless, bottomless pit, my friends. Now, from The Guardian, Trump manufactured crisis to justify, and this is what the liberals are claiming, right? All of this crime that's happening in Democrat cities, it's all manufactured. Yeah, pay no attention to it. Pay no attention to the news reports, or the few news reports about shootings in Chicago on any given weekend. Pay no attention to the murders, which, by the way, interestingly enough, since the National Guard went into Washington, D.C., there haven't been any murders. In fact, there hasn't been a lot of crime at all. Now, why is that? Well, because there's people out in, there's the National Guard, and they're working with police, and they're actually enforcing the law. You see, what happens when you enforce the law is would-be criminals look at the possible penalty of whatever act they're thinking of committing, and they say, is this really worth an orange jumpsuit? Do I really look good in orange? Does it clash with my complexion? I mean, those are certainly things that go through the mind of a criminal. Well, probably not. What probably goes through their mind is, do I want to live the rest of my life in the slammer? And more often than not, the answer to that is no. Now, if we think about Rudolph Giuliani's broken windows theory, it works because, my friends, deterrence works. If there is a stiff penalty for a criminal act, the likelihood is that it will not be committed. And what Rudolph Giuliani said is you fix the broken windows. Because, and by those he meant little crimes, low-level crimes. You fix those because when you walk by a building and it's got a broken window in it, there is a big temptation to pick up a rock and to chuck it through another window because there's already one broken window. Why not have two? Well, you fix those and you keep the building up, and the likelihood that it is going to be damaged decreases dramatically. Similarly, if you prosecute low-level crimes, just like you prosecute high-level crimes, the likelihood that you'll have smash-and-grab robberies and, defacement of public property and people camping out on Wall Street, if you enforce the law, those things, generally speaking, don't happen. But therein lies the rub of it, my friends. We have to actually enforce it. So the Guardian is saying that Trump is manufacturing all of this, that crime is really not that high. And that, it's all a manufactured crisis, which, by the way, here is the Chicago mayor. Listen to this.
And so, look, we're going to remain firm. We'll take legal action. But the people in this city are accustomed to rising up against tyranny. And if that's necessary, I believe that the people of Chicago will stand firm alongside of me as I work every single day to protect the people of this city.
Oh, yeah. He's going to work every single day to protect the people of the great. I mean, that's what he's doing now. Yeah, that's why there's multiple shootings every weekend, that there's multiple murders every weekend. It's because this guy is doing what he's supposed to do. Let's go to the Guardian, and then I've got a video for you from Wes Moore. That the same thing is happening in Baltimore, by the way. The Democrat-run cities. By the way, if you want to go travel to an absolute crap hole, go to a Democrat-run city like Denver. When I lived there in the early 2000s, was a great city. In fact, Colorado pretty much resembled Wyoming. I mean, a little bit more liberal than Wyoming, but I mean, still was a conservative state, was nothing like it is now. Well, the Democrats took over the House and they took the governorship, and now Denver doesn't even resemble anything close to what it did, in the early 2000s. I mean, it is a pot-smoking, crime-infested hellhole. From The Guardian, and I quote, "Planning is underway to send the National Guard troops to Chicago." An official at the Pentagon confirmed to ABC News on Sunday. Quote, "We won't speculate on further operations. The department is a planning organization and is continuously working with other agency partners on plans to protect federal assets and personnel." Earlier on Sunday, Hakeem Jeffries, House Minority Leader and New York Democratic Congressman, said that Donald Trump, quote, "had manufactured a crisis to justify sending federalized National Guard troops into Chicago next week over the heads of local leaders. Jeffries, appearing on the Communist News Network's State of the Union, accused the U.S. president of, quote, "playing games with the lives of Americans with his unprecedented domestic deployment of the military, which has escalated to include arming of troops currently patrolling Washington, D.C. How dare he?" After sending the troops into Los Angeles in June. The mayor of Chicago, Brandon Johnson, said that any such plan from Trump would be perpetrating the most flagrant violation of the Constitution in the 21st century. Here, Johnson again.
And so, look, we're going to remain firm. We'll take legal action. But the people in this city are accustomed to rising up against tyranny.
Yeah,
and if that's necessary, I believe that the people of Chicago will stand firm alongside of me as I work every single day to protect the people of this city.
Yeah, the people love murders. The people love rampant crime. That's why they're going to rise up against tyranny. Absolutely, absolutely mind-boggling that these Democrats actually believe that that argument is going to work. But it goes worse. It goes deeper than that. Other cities like Baltimore, I think Baltimore is like the murder, like close to the murder capital of the world, or of the United States anyway, not the world. I mean, Karachi is probably worse. But let's see here. Oh, wait, I don't have that video. Oh, here we go. No, that's gerrymandering. So, guess I don't have the video of the crime thing. But here's the whole point, my friends, is that if you enforce crime, if you enforce the law and you prosecute crime, crime will go down. You ever wonder why there isn't any crime in Wyoming to speak of, really? I mean, there's the occasional DUI and, there's the occasional domestic violence, but those are pretty few and far between. But do you want to know why? One of the reasons is we have a pretty low population. But the other one is that just about, I would say at a minimum, 1 out of every 4 people you run into are packing a gun. And if you're one of those people that likes to do home invasions, there's a high likelihood that when you crawl into that house, you're going to be met on the other side of the window or door, which, whatever ingress you chose, you're going to probably be met with the business end of a 12 gauge. That's what would probably happen to you. And so there is a deterrent, again, there's that word again, to committing crimes. That's one of the big reasons why, because Wyoming citizens are armed, and frankly, most of them are pretty adept at using their firearms. So if you are going to prosecute crime, if there is a repercussion to whatever people are going to do, whatever criminals are going to do, they're not going to do it. Either because A, they don't look good in orange, or B, they're going to end up on the floor after the homeowner takes them out, which they should absolutely do. And I mean, it's just another bizarre situation, my friends. And I have to tell you, Democrat mayors, Democrat governors, the only reason that they're resisting Donald Trump is that, they don't like him, and they don't want him to win, and they don't want him to be successful, and they think that they've got their citizens buffaloed. But in truth, if either of those guys, Brandon Johnson or J.B. Pritzker, who is the governor of Illinois, if they actually went and talked to their constituents, they would find out that they're pretty much sick of all the crime. But from the Daily Wire, stop talking and get to work. Trump targets top Democrat governor in Sunday morning scolding. And I quote, President Donald Trump targeted Governor Wes Moore in a post on Sunday morning, lashing out at him over an invitation to, quote, walk the streets in Maryland, and saying that he would not do so until Moore took steps to clean up crime. Now, Trump... let's hear. Quote, Governor Wes Moore of Maryland has asked, in a rather nasty and provocative tone, that I walk the streets of Maryland with him. I assume he's talking about the out-of-control, crime-ridden Baltimore. As president, I would much prefer that he clean up his crime disaster before I go there for a walk, Trump concluded, arguing that, let's see here, Wes Moore's record on crime is a very bad one, unless he fudges his figures on crime like many other blue states are doing. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Actually, he continued. President, let's hear. But if Wes Moore needs help, like Gavin Newsom did in L.A., I will send in the troops, which is being done in nearby D.C. and quickly cleaning up crime. After only 1 week, there is no crime and no murder in Washington, D.C. When it is like that in Baltimore, I will probably walk the streets with the failing because of crime governor of Maryland, Trump added. P.S. Baltimore is ranked the fourth worst city in the nation in crime and murder. Stop talking and get back to work. I'll see you on the streets. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Now, Wes Moore, I mean, he is he is an activist, and here's that video I was thinking I had of him, but it's actually on gerrymandering. So, instead of the governor taking care of everything that is going on in Baltimore, that he's taking care of crime, that he's actually prosecuting crime, He's on the news talking about gerrymandering, which it is gerrymandering. It's not gerrymandering. It's amazing that just about everybody is mispronouncing it. But anyway, here you go. Here's Governor Wes Moore.
I want to ask you about something your party is tinkering with here, redistricting or gerrymandering, as some people know it. You've said you don't like talking about it, but all options are on the...
Hold the phone. Here's another one of my pet peeves that I've developed recently. Redistricting is not synonymous with gerrymandering. Those are two different things. Redistricting is the lawful process by which we make sure that legislative districts have the correct amount of, that they are representing the correct amount of citizens because of that court ruling. And I wish I could remember the name of that ruling, but it says one man, one vote. Redistricting is a legal process. That is, you redraw the legislative boundaries as appropriate. Now, because politicians are in charge of redistricting, often it leads to gerrymandering. Now, gerrymandering was first started by this guy named Eldridge Gary. That's why we know it's gerrymandering. It's not gerrymandering. Anyway, Eldridge Gary, he redrew a district in, I believe it was Maryland, but don't quote me on that. And it was in the shape of a salamander, the mandering part. And all of it was to disadvantage his political opponent. So redistricting, what Texas is doing, is the legal process of determining representation in Congress. Gerrymandering is monkeying around with the political boundaries to benefit one political party or another. The two are not synonymous. Now, of course, the Democrats want to use them synonymously. And the reason for it is there are negative connotations to the word gerrymandering. And so it causes people to think of this principleless politician playing around with political boundaries so that they can get better representation in Congress. That's why the media is using the term synonymously with redistricting. They're two different things. One is legal, the other one is playing political games, but they are not the same thing. Let's continue with the video.
Table when it comes to your state. There's only one seat here that is actually Republican, and it's a seat held by Representative Andy Harris. Are you considering trying to redraw lines in Maryland?
Yeah, when I say all options are on the table, all options are on the table.
Are you actively looking at it now?
Yeah, because I think we have to.
Now listen
yes,
to
and
this.
I think we have to, because I think what's happened is this is what people hate about politics in the first place: the fact that the president of the United States, very similar to what he did in Georgia, where he called up a series of voter registrants and said, "I need you to find me more votes." We're watching the same thing now, where he's calling up legislatures around the country and saying,
All right, hold on. The reason why President Trump called Georgia and said, find me those votes, is because he already knew that those votes were in question and he just needed them to be counted. Okay. He knew that. We know that now, Wes Moore. And to say that, yeah, well, there's this one and in Maryland. Okay. So there's one Republican, and yet Trump won a third of the votes in Maryland. So how could that possibly be that there is only one representative in Congress from Maryland that is a Republican when Trump got a third of the vote? It is because of legislative districts that have been monkeyed around by people like Wes Moore. That's why. Let's continue.
I need you to find me more congressional districts.
He's doing it. That may be different, but Democrats redistrict. You know this.
Yeah.
But Gavin Newsom's doing it right now. A few years ago in New York, we saw this. This can backfire. Do you really want to go down this road?
I want to make sure that we have fair lines and fair seats, where we don't have situations where politicians are choosing voters, but that voters actually have a chance to choose their elected officials. We need to be able to have fair maps. And we also need to make sure that if the president of the United States is putting his finger on the scale to try to manipulate elections because he knows that his policies cannot win in a ballot box, then it behooves each and every one of us.
So his policies can't win at a ballot box. Isn't that what we saw in the election? Wasn't that the overwhelming majority of people that voted for Donald Trump? Isn't that winning? Isn't that the winning of your policies at the ballot box? This guy is nothing but a political hack, and he looks like it. To say that they're going to gerrymander their legislative districts for fairness is ridiculous. What he is saying is that he's going to eliminate that one Republican seat. And he's going to use it as a punishment for what Texas is doing. Now, let's talk about that for a minute. So Texas was controlled by a bunch of redcoats. Now, let me tell you again what I mean by the term redcoat. I'm a historian. And during the Revolutionary War, the British had spies everywhere, but nobody really knew who was a spy and who was a patriot because they all dressed the same. And it wasn't until these British spies went to a home that they probably had seized from a colonist, and they took off their patriot clothes and revealed themselves for who they really were. Redcoats. A redcoat is a Republican, or is a Democrat that is masquerading as a Republican. And that happens all the time in Wyoming. Nick Siddle, who I spoke about earlier, he's a classic example. The guy is very, very liberal, and yet he's got that R at the end of the name. Well, in Texas, their state legislature for a really long time, and I think it to some degree, it probably still is, controlled by redcoats. People who really are Democrats, but are in the Republican Party because it's easier for them to get elected. And so it was the redcoats in Texas who were responsible for all of the legislative districts and drawing them to benefit their own party. So what the Texas House is doing, or what they have already voted to do, is to reset those boundaries so that they are correct, so that they actually are fair. Now, here's the problem with language in politics, is that I guess it depends on what your point of view is what is fair and what is not. And both sides do this. So let's not exonerate one side or the other. But both sides participate in gerrymandering. The only difference is that one, it's not happening right now. And if you look at the boundaries that are drawn in Texas, I mean, they're as they should be. Democrats, they draw the salamander whenever they can. And look at Illinois. And here's the ridiculous part of it. All those Texas Democrats fled to the most gerrymandered state in the entire country. The district they were staying in is in the shape of a U. Let me give you another example. Okay, so Agent 29's district. Now, it should be right smack dab in the middle of Sheridan, and the bulk of it is. But if you look at it on a map, it is, Ken calls it the ice skating duck, because it is in a really, really weird shape, and it was specifically drawn that way. So absolutely the case of monkeying around with legislative districts, and that's what Wes Moore in Baltimore is trying to do. And it's all an attempt to offset what Texas is doing, because in Texas, and if you look at the numbers, there absolutely should be more Republicans than there are. That those districts were drawn to benefit the Democrats when the redcoats were in power. And so, and if you look at the numbers, and again, earlier I mentioned representation in Baltimore, where Trump won a third of the votes in Baltimore, but yet there's only one Republican in Congress. I mean, that was exactly the case in Texas. And so what other states are trying to do is offset those additional, what are probably going to end up being Republican seats in Congress. So, I mean, each state can do what they want, either in the middle of the 10-year census cycle or at the end. So in other words, if the year ends in 5 or 0, you can do redistricting. So in any case, my friends, it is the Democrats trying an across-the-country approach to try to gain and to maintain power in the House of Representatives. Don't ever count Democrats to where they're actually going to do something right, because the main Democrat Party, and I'm not saying all Democrats, I'm saying the DNC, the National Democrats. Let me give you an example here. This is from The Hill. Hakeem Jeffries opens the door to more Democratic redistricting. Let's see what comes next. And I quote, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries opened the door to more Democratic redistricting efforts. Okay, so this is where they actually use the other term, gerrymandering. But anyway, A for effort, I guess. Redistricting efforts across the country as he pledges to respond, quote, appropriately to any similar actions undertaken by Republicans. Quote, Texas acted in a way to try and rig congressional maps so they could add a couple of different seats to the Republican column, Jeffries said in an interview Sunday on the Communist News Network's State of the Union. Quote, California responded forcefully, and we will continue to respond when necessary across the country, he continued. Right now, this has happened in Texas, and California has responded. Let's see what comes next. Jeffries said he has been in touch with the New York Governor Kathy Hochul and other legislative leaders in the state about redistricting efforts, but sidestepped a question on whether there are any immediate plans to respond. There's a plan to respond as appropriately in New York and in other parts of the country as circumstances dictate. So, in other words, we don't like that to reset everything fairly would result in more Republicans in Congress, and therefore we're going to monkey around with legislative districts to remold them closer to our heart's desire. But the Democrats, they have a couple of issues that they need to really confront. One of them is that the Democrat Party really doesn't have any sort of mission. I mean, they don't have a platform. They don't really have any voters. It was very clear from the last election that whatever their talking points are, their policies, which I would argue that they really don't have any, but they don't resonate with American voters. Or the majority of them anyway. That's why they lost so badly in the last election. And so they've really got a what I might call a come to Jesus meeting coming. And they really need to do that as soon as possible. Well, when we come back, we're going to talk about the Democrats' David Duke moment. Back in a second.
What everybody say? Now it's gone away. Rocks now down, nothing left to do.
It's spring-ish in Wyoming. Well, what that means for the uninitiated is that it's going to be 70 degrees one day and then snow 1.5 feet the next. And really, if you don't like those two options, just wait a little bit. The weather will change. I know, it sounds a little stressful, but really you should put your mind at ease and buy a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They'll keep you warm and dry even on the nastiest, coldest spring-ish day, and they'll keep you cool and dry even when it's 75 and sunny. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Are you one of those guys that listen to the president just a little bit too closely and now you're tired of winning? Are you getting the feeling that there's been way too many good things happening in our country and you just can't take it anymore? Well, if you are, and you think you should follow Rosie O'Donnell's example and get the heck out of Dodge, you need to call Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She'll make those foreign country living ideas a reality for you. All you have to do is call 307-699-3519, and she'll make sure some freedom-loving, red-blooded American will now live in the home that you no longer want. If you want to sell your house, or if you want to buy one that's way better than the house you have right now, give Rebecca a call. Again, her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy State Politics is only going to get stronger. Number 30 on the list of the 100 podcasts you should be listening to in 2025. 500,000 views on Facebook, over 67,000 downloads on the podcast. Nobody else even comes close, my friends. Thank you for listening to the program. I really appreciate it. And actually, thank you for everything you do on this program. Now, before the break, I mentioned that the Democrats really do have what the Blaze calls a David Duke moment happening in New York City. And they're specifically referring to Zoran Mamdani. Now, before I get there, I just want to play you a couple of little things where they're having a problem. And this next one, this might seem a little bit incongruous, but I'm going to play it for you. And then we're going to, let's see here. Where is it? Well, maybe I don't have it. Let's see, Jerome Powell. Yeah. So anyway, here it is. It's audio. See, again, this is why I need a producer. I have to have Agent 29 back. He makes this show run a lot smoother than it is. But I'm very thankful that he's off supporting the people, representing the people. By the way, Agent 29 is my representative, so I'm pretty happy that he's working hard. Anyway, so now that I've got my bearings straight, here's Bill Maher. Now, listen close. And again, this might seem a little incongruous. And I'm going to warn you right now, there is a little bit of profanity in this one. So he doesn't drop an F-bomb, but he comes close. But I'm going to play it for you anyway, and then we're going to talk about it on the other side. Here you go.
Elections are won on the margins by a coalition of little things that hit people personally. Trump gets this. He feels your pain in the ass. Kamala ran on democracy, which is the most important issue, but without the political skill to sell it. It added up to nothing. Meanwhile, Trump was running on, I'll make the poop go down. He never shut up about bad shower pressure, shitty light bulbs, and low-flow toilets. Not exactly ask not what your country can do for you, but for some little niche group, it was all that mattered. He's right. It shouldn't take 2 flushes to make my shit go away. That's my guy, YMCA.
Yeah, listen to the applause.
People say, it doesn't make sense. He's a billionaire from New York, no less. And everything he sits on is gold. How could he possibly connect with the common man? And yet he keeps winning more of them.
Yep.
Trump got trounced by black voters in 2016, so he brought in some muscle from the West Coast, someone he knows black men love, Kim Kardashian.
So hold on. Okay, so and just a quick pause here. Now, of course, Bill Maher's a liberal. He's not a wacko liberal, but he is a liberal. Now, in just a second, he's going to say, well, these black folks voted for Trump because of Kim Kardashian and Lil Wayne and all that. Well, the truth is, when you look at the voting data, Trump doubled the amount of people in the African-American community that voted for him. In fact, Trump gained in every constituency, every single one of them, which tells you that focusing on those kitchen table issues are, that's what voters want to hear. The reason why Trump won is because voters don't give, they didn't buy the whole, we're fighting for democracy stuff, which Bill Maher says is, that's the right issue. Well, really, it's not. Because it doesn't resonate with voters. Voters care about the things that affect their pocketbook and the things that affect their daily life. And if you're not talking about those things, well, then you're not going to win. Either that or their head is in the clouds so far as they are if you're the ultra wealthy on the Upper West Side of New York and you think that a socialist is the answer. But let's go ahead and finish what Bill Maher says, because right at the end, he brings up a really important thing that I want to talk about. So let's just go ahead and finish this up.
Yeah. Together they passed the First Step Act, which scaled back restrictions on felons, a connection he built on in 2024 by becoming one.
Okay, it's kind of funny. You can laugh. It's all right.
And then he pardoned Lil Wayne and pardoned Kodak Black and the CEO of Jay-Z's company and the founder of Death Row Records and the former mayor of Detroit. So it's not surprising that Kanye and Wayne and Chris Brown and Amber Rose and Snoop and DaBaby all talked him up. That last one out of professional courtesy. Now, did he win the black vote? Not even close. But he doubled What he got in 2020 in places like Philly, Detroit, and Milwaukee, that was the difference. And now he's going to do it with pot. Finally, he got around to me.
Aha. See, now, Bill Maher's point is that a lot of voters, most voters, have their own little niche issue. And when a politician is speaking directly to voters, that is, addressing those things that voters really care about, well, they're going to vote for him. Now, think about this. How many places do you think are left untouched by illegal immigration? How many? I would argue that there's not very many at all. When illegal immigration touches even a small Wyoming town, you know that we have a problem, and voters see it. You know, it gets reported in the newspaper, even though the Sheridan Press is probably one of the worst newspapers in Wyoming. They still report in the rap sheet, illegal immigrant arrested, breaking into ATMs. And so that one issue touched just about every American. And because it was Trump's number one issue, they voted for it. And the point that he brings up right at the end, and now he's getting down to pot. Now he's finally addressing something that even Bill Maher cares about. Well, his point is that Donald Trump is focusing on those issues that matter to voters, that he's talking directly to them as opposed to the Democrats who are saying dumb stuff like we have to fight for democracy and resist the tyranny, even though every third weekend in Sheridan, there's a bunch of idiot Democrats that protest down on Grinnell Plaza. It's all the same people, just saying different stuff, talking points from the DNC. And if you go talk to them, hardly any of them know why they're there. You just ask them simple questions like, hey, if we have a king, how is it possible that you're able to protest not having a king? I mean, does that make any sense? What exactly do you mean by we have an authoritarian in the White House? And none of them can articulate a solid argument because there is no solid argument to articulate. And Republicans and Democrats, or Republicans and Donald Trump know that. Now, let's go to that piece in The Blaze. And it really is, and I find this one fascinating, that Democrats face their David Duke moment in New York City. And I quote, just like Republicans once rejected the KKK's David Duke. Now, I don't know, many listeners to Cowboy State Politics may not remember him, but he was a prominent KKK member, and he did run for, it's probably going to tell us in the piece here, but he ran for a number of high-profile, so he ran for governor of Louisiana. Okay, so quoting from the piece here, Zoran Mamdani is now the Democrats' nominee for the mayor of New York City. He is also an openly anti-Semitic socialist. His nomination puts the Democrat Party in a position not unlike one of the Republicans faced in 1991 when David Duke, a former Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, became the GOP nominee in Louisiana's gubernatorial runoff. Now, it's the Democrats' turn. They must reject Zoran Mamdani and the hateful, dangerous movement that he represents, just as the Republicans did with David Duke. This is the Democrats' David Duke moment, and they're failing the test. Now, in 1991, in Louisiana's jungle primary, the two top vote getters were Edwin Edwards, a former Democratic governor who had been charged with bribery and later convicted of extortion and money laundering. So that's choice number one. The other one was David Duke, the former Grand Wizard of the KKK, who ran as a Republican. Duke received only 32% of the vote, but that was enough to advance to the runoff. And although he had run for office several times in the 1980s as a Democrat, because the KKK was started by the Democrats, and make no mistake, it absolutely was, well, he ran as a Republican anyway, and he won the Republican candidacy. Faced with an impossible choice of backing an unrepentant white supremacist on their party's ticket, Republicans rallied around Edwards, launching a campaign under the under the nose-holding slogan, "Vote for the crook, it's important." And it worked. The crook Edwards defeated Duke 61% to 39%. That crossover vote was no small feat. This was the early 1990s, a time when Southern Democrats were in full collapse. Just 3 years earlier, George H.W. Bush beat Michael Dukakis by 10 points in Louisiana. Even the governor at the time, Buddy Roemer, had switched parties to run as a Republican because the Democratic brand was so out of favor. In fact, bipartisan revulsion at Romer's political opportunism contributed to Duke's finishing second in the primary. But in the end, Republicans knew what needed to be done. They didn't like voting for Edwards, but a white supremacist was a non-starter. Now, 34 years later, the Jew-hating Red as Democrats' candidate for mayor of New York City, one of the most prominent political offices in America. This is the Democrats' David Duke moment. But instead of rejecting Mamdani, who, like David Duke, would have been a washout from the start, prominent Democrats are embracing him. Senator Elizabeth Warren, for example, told Fox News that Mamdani is the future of the Democrat Party. Mamdani isn't some garden variety progressive. He occupies a very dark corner of the political spectrum, somewhere between Vladimir Lenin and Hamas. His candidacy should be as repugnant as the KKK Grand Wizard. But apparently, it's not. Rich folks on the Upper West Side of Manhattan are rallying around him, funding him. Mamdani, the last number I heard is he raised $1 million last month, way outpacing Andrew Cuomo. In 2021, Mamdani summed up his anti-Israel worldview in one sentence. Quote, "There are also other issues that we firmly believe in, whether it's boycott, divestment, and sanctions against Israel, or whether it is the end goal of seizing the means of production." Mamdani doesn't just support the BDS movement against Israel. He's defended calls to globalize the intifada, a phrase that means exporting terrorism against Jews to every corner of the world, including the United States. My friends, the prospect of Mamdani being the mayor of New York is absolutely terrifying, and it should scare the crap out of everybody. But even political missteps that Mamdani is committing, like saying we need to have government-run grocery stores, are not dissuading anybody in New York. In fact, he's gaining in the polls. It won't be until, it's not going to be until New York actually has what they wanted, that they will realize what a big mistake that they made. Now, I've always said, my friends, that as a historian, I have to believe that voters get the candidate that they deserve. That there has never been an election in America, or for the U.S. presidency anyway, that was wrong. People have to vote. And unless your name is Joe Biden, in which case I firmly believe that election was rigged. But just about every other election, voters get what they deserve. Barack Obama, nobody read his book. And in Dreams from My Father, he straight out told you exactly what he was going to do if elected. But nobody read his book, and they voted for him anyway. And even though the Joe Biden administration was decidedly way more liberal than Obama's, Obama did great damage to the U.S. And, so let me just give you an example of this idiot Mamdani and his campaigning. And, none of this is actually having any effect. Now, I'm going to warn you right now that the audio on this is really annoying, but here you go anyway. All right. Well, we'll just hold on just right there. So, this is a weightlifting thing in New York City, and Mamdani gets down on the bench, and he can't even bench press 135 pounds, which is the bar, and then two big weights, 245s on either side. But, they've got them stacked up. You'll see in the video. But he can't even bench press just that little amount, and he can't even do a rep without being helped. Watch the video, and you'll see it. Here you go.
This is how you move up in the polls. Yeah.
Oh, annoying. Watch this.
Yeah. Let's go. Yeah. Let me get 3.
So he can't even do one rep of 135 pounds. And I don't think that disqualifies him just there. But I'm using it as an example of political missteps that this guy is committing. Saying we need government-run grocery stores, and then openly defending socialism and the seizing the means of production. And then, this is I don't know if this is Mamdani's version of getting in a tank like Michael Dukakis and looking like a moron. But none of that is having any effect. And so it is very likely that Mamdani is going to be the mayor of New York City. unless, of course, that something crazy happens in the election and Democrats figure out that having a socialist in power is probably a very, very bad thing. I doubt that's going to happen. It is going to be yet another annal in a long line of politicians that that you voters shouldn't have voted for, because I mean it's really it's really against their best interest. But let me just give you a rundown of some of the positions that Mamdani holds, and you just tell me if anywhere else in the country that these things would resonate with voters. Quoting from the piece, quote, although Mamdani won the Democrat primary, he is actually an official member of the Democratic Socialists of America. That group's radical platform includes defunding the police, releasing prisoners, abolishing prisons, nationalizing industry and abolishing capitalism, eliminating carbon-based fuels, providing public housing for all, and closing all U.S. military bases. Taxation is theft. Or taxation isn't theft. Capitalism is. Queer liberation means defund the police. We don't need more accountability. We need fewer police. So riddle me that, my friends. Would those stances and statements fly anywhere else in the country? Would any politician be able to utter those things and have any prayer of getting elected? Now, the answer is no. But because he has radical Democrats who are clueless about who he is supporting him, and in New York City, anything can happen, my friends, but what they are going to experience is a radical socialist in control of America's largest city. So let's just see here. I've got just a few minutes left on the program. And there's one thing that I wanted to talk about, and I got about 10 minutes, so we'll be all right. So Jerome Powell was in Jackson, and he gave a speech in which he said that he's probably, we're probably going to decrease interest rates. And I've got a video of somebody from the Fed or familiar with the Fed talking about Jerome Powell's speech. But let me just kind of give you the headlines, and then I'll show you the video. Quote, Fed Chairman Jerome Powell on Friday gave a tepid indication of possible interest rate cuts ahead as he noted a high level of uncertainty that is making the job difficult for monetary policymakers. Okay, so what is inflation? Inflation is money printing. It's when the government just hits the print button and injects cash into the market. The theory being that if you have more cash to spend, you'll spend it, and that'll drive up buying and boost the economy. And then on the back end, you use interest rates to take that money out of the system. What has not been happening in America while Joe Biden was president is that, and you have to have high interest rates to do that. Right. So we've had rampant inflation. That is a lot of money printing, but relatively low interest rates. So, and that's the only thing that interest rates actually do when you get down to it. Yes, I mean, that's how banks make money. When you go get a loan, they charge you interest. But banks also have to pay interest on the money that they get to loan you. So those interest rates, when they're increased to a high level, the whole point is to take cash out of the system and keep inflation. And they say that 2% inflation is about right. I would argue that it needs to be like 0.5% or 1.5%. But anyway, you use high interest rates to hammer down inflation. But that is the only thing. Inflation is not rising prices. Inflation is not corporate greed. Inflation is not energy companies wanting to make huge prices. Inflation is not the increase in prices at the grocery store. Now, increased prices is a result of inflation because of the cost of goods. And if you ever want to gauge inflation, just pick a product at the store. I suggest something like coffee or bread or milk or something. The big thing in the campaign was lower egg prices. Eggs are another good commodity that you can track inflation with, but just chart the price and it'll go up and it'll go down. And interestingly enough, those price increases will be almost a direct representation of the amount of inflation, that is money printing, that we're seeing. So Jerome Powell also said, quote, with policy in restrictive territory, the baseline outlook and the shifting balance of risks may warrant adjusting our policy stance, he said during his annual address in Jackson Hole. While not addressing White House demands for rate cuts specifically, Powell did note the importance of Fed independence. Okay, whatever. Well, the only driver of interest rates needs to be the level of inflation. When inflation is high, when you're doing a lot of money printing, you should have high interest rates so that you can take that cash out of the system. But low interest rates, they don't take any cash out of the system. But it does help in lending, right? But if you got a lot of cash in the, if you're doing a lot of money printing and you're not taking any of it out, what's going to happen is increased prices for everything. So let me just show you, and I don't know how much of this video will play, but this is talking about Jerome Powell's speech in Jackson last week. Listen to this.
At Jackson Hole, Fed Chair Jay Powell will say that the shifting balance of risk, quote, may warrant adjusting our policy stance. Policy says is in modestly restrictive territory, but the stability of the unemployment rate right now allows the Fed to proceed.
Okay, stop.
Carefully.
Stop.
It's a lot of
stop. All right, so the unemployment rate is not a cause of inflation. It might be a result of inflation. That is, businesses can't afford to do business because you're injecting way too much cash in the system. But the high employment rate is not a driver of inflation, nor should it be a driver of interest rates. Yeah, it's a bad symptom of what you're doing policy-wise in a monetary system, but it's just a result. It's just a symptom of what you're doing. That shouldn't dictate your interest rate policies. Now, the only thing that should dictate interest rates is the amount of inflation. Okay, if you are printing money, which you shouldn't be doing anyway, you should allow the free market to operate. But if you are, you have to have high interest rates. The other symptoms, right? You don't decrease rates because eggs are overpriced. Okay, the high price of goods is a symptom of what you're doing in your monetary policy. Let's go ahead and continue here.
this but that in this speech. The inflation risks are to the upside, but employment risks are to the downside. With these goals in tension, the Fed will take a balanced approach to the dual mandate. Let's talk about on tariffs and inflation, later on jobs. On tariffs, he says higher tariffs have begun to push up prices in some categories. He sees a 2.9% core PCE for July. That's up a tenth from June. He notes that there's a notable increase in goods, downward inflation in housing, and non-housing services, a key factor for him, have been a bit high.
Okay, all right. Again, what you're hearing is the Fed chairman, Jerome Powell, say, well, you know, there's inflation in home buying. No. You're conflating words. Inflation means one thing, my friends, money printing. Now, if you're using the word in another context, you need to explain it. So if there's an inflation in home buying, what you literally mean is more people are buying houses. That is not inflation. And the problem with one of the reasons why most people don't understand interest rates and inflation is because we throw around words, and they do that and it's intentional to confuse you into thinking that, well, you know, if there's a lot of home buying going on, that's a result of inflation. Or if there's a lot of if there's a lot of unemployment, that's inflation. Or if the prices are high at the grocery store, that's inflation. No, it's not. Inflation, period, is money printing, and that's all it is. And you wonder why Donald Trump wants to get rid of Jerome Powell. Let's continue.
Effects on tariff consumer prices are, quote, now clearly visible. He expects them to accumulate over the coming months. However, a reasonable base case is the tariff effects, quote, will be relatively short-lived. Will continue to take time, however.
All right, man. There's way too many stops in this. I hadn't thought how many times I'm going to want to complain about this guy. Tariffs don't cause inflation. Tariffs do not affect inflation. Inflation is money printing. The only way that tariffs would affect inflation is if somebody in the White House or at the Federal Reserve said, oh, look at all these tariffs. We have to print money. But they are not a direct cause of inflation. That is an absolute lie that you are being told, and it's being propagated by people at the Fed and the Democrats when they were talking about it. But if you'll notice, the Democrats aren't complaining about it anymore because the tariffs are resulting in a lot of cash coming back into our country. My friends, we've got to talk truth. We've got to say what, be honest about what things are. Now, this report from Jackson, I mean, the guy's just repeating what Jerome Powell said. I get it. But Jerome Powell, in large part, is not telling Americans the truth, which is one of the reasons why he needs to be fired. Now, on the other hand, though, there have been a lot of reports of Donald Trump saying, oh, we just need to lower interest rates. Again, that should only be a function of the amount of money that you've printed. And, both Republicans and Democrats have been guilty of rampant money printing. So it's not one party or the other. But, just so you understand, there's only two variables here, the amount of money that you print and the level of your interest rates. Interest rates control the amount of money that's taken out of the system, which, I know it's confusing. It's kind of a bummer of an article to end the program on. But anyway, we'll be back tomorrow for an abbreviated program. And then my friends, are hitting the road. But we'll be back at it tomorrow at 8 a.m. Make sure that you don't miss a single moment of Cowboy State Politics. The podcast every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, which, by the way, you should go subscribe and follow that thing. The way that you do that is from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There's a little icon on the Podbean thing that says subscribe. Go ahead and hit that. Or anywhere else that you get your podcasts. But for now, from the base of the Bighorns, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics. We'll see you tomorrow, my friends.